It's the Saturday after Valentine's Day, and you're up at an ungodly hour. Your eyes are blurry, and your hands are still cramped from last time, but you don't care. Because it's time for the next session of the Elden Ring Nightreign network test. So lace up your running shoes, get out your reading glasses, and catch the nearest bird taxi to what is shaping up to be one of the most exciting experiences that FromSoft has ever created. This weekend, From Software did a closed network test for its new multiplayer game, Elden Ring Nightreign. In such a test, a large number of players from all over the world are invited to try a beta build of the game at the same time to test whether the network can support the kind of activity that the studio is expecting upon launch. The first day, it's fair to say that the network failed the test. Me and everyone else on PS5 waited impatiently in front of our TVs for 3 hours, not being able to play at all, while all our friends who had Xboxes were gleefully playing without us. I guess now we see who really won the console wars. Fortunately, they fixed the servers the next day, and so I managed to play a whole 7 hours of the game. In Nightreign, you play as one of 4 preset characters, each of which has a particular stat profile and special skills. Apparently in the full game there will be 8 characters to pick from, but in the test we could only choose from 4. My personal favorite is the Duchess, a character who's the spitting image of my favorite FromSoft character of all time, Lady Maria from Bloodborne. Oh, I really hope we get some new Lady Maria lore in this game, but I guess we'll have to see. She's a Dex character who can do high damage, but she's really squishy, especially at the beginning. She can turn herself invisible, which is good for both defense and offense, since you can chase the boss around hitting them and they can't even see you. And she also does this stopwatch move that rewinds time to reapply a portion of the damage that has been applied in the previous couple of seconds. You know who else has a very close relationship with clocks? Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower. Just saying, I'm pretty optimistic. The second character is Wilder, who's the literal poster boy for the game. He appears to be a quality character who can benefit from both strength and dex weapons. He has a cool grappling hook and can shoot a giant firebomb that tends to do huge physical and posture damage. Then there's the Guardian, who's a tank. He's a giant beefy bird who can summon a tornado around himself. By far his ultimate skill is my favorite. He does this dive bomb that basically explodes everything around him. It's good for individual bosses, but it's great for clearing out crowds. Finally, there's the Recluse, who's a mage character. She's the most complex character to play, I think. She has one skill that allows her to extract magical elements from a fight and create a cocktail from them to make a giant attack. And then another that allows her to mark an enemy, and every time the team damages the enemy, they get health and mana back. I actually think the Recluse is quite intriguing, but I'll need some more practice to play her optimally. One thing that threw me off is that, unlike in Elden Ring, you don't have a mana Estus blast. So you really have to manage your mana in a way that I was not used to, and I frequently found myself unable to deal damage halfway through a fight. Fortunately, on one run, I found a character upgrade that made my dodge spawn a firebolt. If you've ever played Hades, you'll know what I'm talking about. So then, whenever I was out of mana, I just started dodging around the boss and could still keep contributing. Speaking of upgrades, the whole game is centered around them. You and 2 teammates drop into the land of Limvale, basically they took Limgrave and Stormvale and kind of smushed them together, and your goal is to beat 3 bosses over a 3-day period. You have to fight a first boss on the first night, a second boss on the second night, and then the final boss on the third night. In the days, your job is to try to get strong enough to beat the boss of the night. Concretely, what this means is that you have to zoom around the map fighting enemies to gain runes to level, which you do in a super speedy fashion at Graces, along with finding weapons and upgrades whose placements are randomly generated for each run. And when I say zoom, I mean zoom. We can now run crazy fast, way faster than Torrent, without any stamina cost. We can take spirit springs on foot, and we even have a bird glider that we can use to fly across the whole map. And we really need all this speed. After what seems to be only a tiny amount of time, the music will start to swell and a purple acid rain will restrict the map and force you into a combat with the boss. If you ever played Fortnite or PUBG, you'll know what I'm talking about. The pace can get a little overwhelming at the beginning, but it quickly becomes exhilarating once you get a bit used to it. For example, all the weapons now have random Ashes of War, as well as other passive buffs that will apply to you if you have them in your inventory. This means that you should really be reading each item of loot that you find very carefully to understand what the buff is, and then carefully reflect on any possible synergies with existing items that you may have. However, if you do that, you're likely to be left behind by your group and swallowed up by the poison rain. So it's really an exercise in speed reading and speed reasoning, at least until we know and have memorized a full inventory of Ashes of War buffs and upgrades. So to sum up, Elden Ring Nightreign is a frantic mix of a speedrun and randomizer race that I found to be a really great time. I think the characters that you play are interesting, and it was cool to see both Elden Ring and Dark Souls bosses in new arenas. Sometimes I actually like the new arena more than the old one. If you've ever fought the Centipede Demon in the Lava Lake in Dark Souls 1, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm excited to see how they mix up the maps in the full game, because the maps that we had to play in the beta test were limited. I'm also excited to learn a little bit more about the story. Well, as much as we can expect from Soft to tell us a story. I'm also a bit nervous to see how the multiplayer and difficulty scaling will work once the game launches to the general public. I'm assuming that the people who were selected for the network test were all people who indicated that they had a fair amount of experience with Elden Rings and Dark Souls in the questionnaire. As a Souls player of moderate skill, I found the difficulty level perfect. It was hard, but I managed to usually make it through the first day or the second day, making it to the final boss a couple of times, and almost beating them once. However, the occasional time we had a really bad run, it was absolute torture. So I'm a bit concerned about how accessible the game will be to newcomers. So that's it for a quick review of the Nightreign beta. Suffice to say, I'll be looking forward to its launch on May 30th, and I'm hoping desperately that those servers are up to scratch.